Right now, your dog is watching you. Maybe they're curled up nearby, maybe they just followed you into the room for no obvious reason, or maybe they're staring at you with that soft, heavy-lidded gaze that somehow feels more sincere than most things you've experienced from another human. And you've probably wondered at some point, what is going on inside that head? What does your dog actually think you are? Most people assume the answer is pretty simple. They think, oh, my dog sees me as the person who feeds them. Or maybe, they see me as the pack leader. Some people have heard that dogs think humans are just really big, awkward dogs, and while that idea has floated around for years, science has a much more fascinating answer. The truth is that your dog doesn't see you as human, not in the way another human would. They don't see you as a fellow dog either. What your dog sees when they look at you is something far more specific, far more ancient, and honestly far more extraordinary than either of those things. They see a lifeline. A biological anchor. Something they have been evolving toward for over 15,000 years. And today, we're going to unpack exactly what that means, because once you understand the science, the way you look at your dog will never quite be the same. Let's start at the very beginning, because the story of dogs and humans is one of the most remarkable partnerships in the entire history of life on Earth. Around 15,000 years ago, and some researchers believe it may have been even longer than that, wolves began a gradual process of self-domestication. They started hanging around human settlements, drawn by scraps of food and warmth. But here is where it gets interesting. The wolves that survived and thrived weren't necessarily the biggest or the strongest. They were the ones that could read people, the wolves that could pick up on a human's mood, that could understand when a person was relaxed or agitated, that could follow a human's gaze or respond to a subtle gesture. Those animals were fed, protected, and eventually bred. Over thousands of generations, something genuinely new emerged. Not a wolf. Not a human. Something in between. A creature biologically designed, through the slow patient engine of evolution, to understand us. And here is the part that consistently stuns researchers. Dogs can follow a pointed finger. You point at something, and your dog looks where you're pointing. That sounds almost embarrassingly simple until you realize that chimpanzees, our closest genetic relatives, animals with complex social structures and problem-solving abilities that rival young children, largely cannot do this. Chimps look at the finger itself. Dogs look where the finger is pointing. They understand the communicative intent behind the gesture. They are, in a very literal biological sense, wired to read human signals in a way that no other animal on the planet has developed quite so completely. So when your dog looks at you, they are not doing what a wolf would do, and they are not doing what another dog does when they look at their packmate. They are running a highly specialized social program that exists for one purpose: to understand you. Now let's talk about what happens in your dog's body when you're around, and more painfully, when you're not. Because this is where the science starts to feel genuinely emotional. When you leave the house, even for something as brief as a grocery run, your dog's stress hormones spike. Cortisol, the same hormone associated with anxiety in humans, rises almost immediately after you walk out the door. Researchers have documented this across dozens of studies, and it explains a lot of the behaviors people chalk up to dogs being dramatic or needy. The whining, the restlessness, the way some dogs press themselves against the front door, that's not theater. That's a biological stress response. But here is the part of the research that stops scientists in their tracks. When those same stressed-out dogs were played a recording of their owner's voice, not just any human voice, specifically their owner, the cortisol levels dropped. The stress response calmed. Just the sound of your voice, even through a speaker, acts as a kind of physiological sedative for your dog's nervous system. Not a stranger's voice. Not a generic human recording. Yours. Which means your dog's brain has encoded your voice specifically, categorized it as safe, and built an entire calming response around it. You are, neurologically speaking, your dog's comfort object. And if that's not extraordinary enough, consider what researchers at Emory University discovered when they put dogs inside an MRI scanner and exposed them to a variety of scents. They found that your scent, the particular cocktail of biological markers that makes you smell like you, is the only scent that reliably activates the reward center of your dog's brain. The caudate nucleus, the part of the brain associated with love, pleasure, and anticipation, lights up for your smell in a way it simply does not for strangers, other animals, or even other familiar humans. You are not just a safe presence to your dog. You are literally their happy place, encoded at the level of neuroscience. Let's move to something a little more subtle but equally remarkable, the way your dog watches your face. Because your dog is not just glancing at you. They are reading you, and they are doing it with a level of sophistication that took scientists completely by surprise. When a dog looks at a human face, they exhibit what researchers call a left gaze bias. Their eyes are drawn first to the left side of the face they're looking at, which is actually the right side as you're facing them. Now this might sound like a random preference, but it isn't random at all. The left side of a human face is predominantly controlled by the brain's right hemisphere, which is the hemisphere most responsible for processing and expressing emotions. Dogs have learned, over thousands of years of living alongside us, that the left side of our face is where the most emotionally rich information lives. They have literally evolved a visual strategy optimized for reading human emotion. What makes this even more remarkable is that dogs don't show this same left gaze bias when they look at other dogs, or at objects, or at non-human animals. It is a behavior specifically activated by human faces. And it doesn't stop at recognizing familiar emotions in people they know. Studies have shown that dogs can distinguish between happy and angry faces even in photographs of complete strangers, people they have never met, presented as flat images with no smell, no movement, no additional context. They are reading the emotional information in a still photograph and processing it correctly. That is a level of emotional intelligence that feels almost unsettling when you really sit with it. Here is something you've probably noticed about your dog that you might not have known was actually a language. The way they wag their tail. Not just whether they wag it, but which direction. Researchers discovered something extraordinary when they began studying tail wag asymmetry in dogs, and it completely reframed how we understand canine communication. When a dog experiences something positive, seeing their owner, getting a treat, greeting a trusted friend, their tail tends to wag with a bias toward the right side. When a dog feels uncertain, anxious, or is sizing up something unfamiliar, a stranger, a new animal, a confusing situation, their tail wags with a bias toward the left. The direction isn't random. It maps onto the same hemispheric division we see in emotional processing across many mammals, including humans. The left side of the brain, which governs the right side of the body, handles approach behaviors and positive emotional states. The right side handles withdrawal and caution, but here's where it gets truly fascinating. Other dogs can read these directional wags. When researchers showed dogs videos of other dogs wagging to the right versus to the left, the watching dogs showed measurable stress responses specifically when they saw left side wags. They weren't just watching a tail move. They were reading a complete emotional sentence. A right-sided wag says, "I'm comfortable, I'm happy, things are good." A left-sided wag says, "I'm not sure about this. Something feels off." Your dog is communicating in a language that is invisible to most human eyes, but is completely legible to every other dog in the room. And now we arrive at perhaps the most profound discovery of all. The one that, when I first read about it, made me sit quietly for a moment and just think about the animals we share our lives with. When a dog and their owner gaze into each other's eyes, something happens in both of their bodies. Oxytocin levels rise. In the human. And in the dog. Simultaneously. Oxytocin is sometimes called the love hormone or the bonding hormone, and it plays a central role in some of the most powerful emotional connections biology produces. It is the hormone that surges between a mother and her newborn baby in those first hours of life. It's the same chemical that strengthens the bond between partners, between close friends, between people in moments of genuine intimacy and trust, and it rises in your dog when they look into your eyes. Not when they look at a stranger. Not when they observe another dog. When they look at you. What researchers identified is that this creates a feedback loop. The eye contact triggers oxytocin in both of you. That oxytocin makes you both feel bonded and safe. That feeling makes you both more likely to continue the eye contact, which releases more oxytocin, which deepens the bond. On, in a loop that has been running between dogs and humans for thousands of years. This is what your dog actually is to you, and what you actually are to them. Not just a pet and an owner. Not even simply companions. You are the anchor point of your dog's entire neurochemical world. The sound your dog's nervous system relaxes to. The scent that lights up their brain like a reward. The face their eyes have evolved specifically to read. The presence that, across 15,000 years of shared evolution, became encoded into them as something worth staying close to, worth watching, worth missing when you walk out the door. The next time your dog follows you from room to room for no obvious reason, or rests their head on your knee while you're working, or looks up at you with that gaze that feels like something more than just an animal watching a person, you'll know what it actually is. It's the product of thousands of years of evolution pointing in one direction. It's biology saying, this one. This is the one. And honestly, when you think about it that way, the fact that your dog is happy to see you when you come home might just be one of the most scientifically extraordinary things that happens in your life on a regular basis.